Great Master Ma-Tsu was sick. The temple superintendent asked him, "Teacher, how is your venerable health these days?" The great master said, "Sun-face Buddha, moon-face Buddha." Well, this last week I've had COVID for the second time. Not as bad this time, but it's always going to bring impermanence, the unknown, to mind. This body, this mind, things that were no problem at all a few days ago. Moving around, breathing, thinking clearly, suddenly are a problem. Strange pains appear out of nowhere. Are they here to stay? Are they going? We don't know. Things change. I'm of an age now where I might be beginning to worry about getting COVID. I have a very minor heart condition, so do I worry about that in relation to COVID? This business of being an embodied being, it's complicated. Change is constant, change is certain, but what the direction of that change is, at any given moment, who knows? And yet, my sense of limitation as an embodied being, well, my limitation is identical with my possibility. You can't separate them. There's not an atom between them, and although it can feel like they're ends of a scale, polar opposites, in actual fact, they absolutely are mutually necessary. No embodiment, no limitation. No embodiment, no possibility. And in a major sense, that's what this koan is about. Master Ma is asked, "How is your health?" Sun-face Buddha, moon-face Buddha. Koans are always asking us to look for similarity and difference between sameness and otherness. So what's the same here and what's different? Well, had we read it, the Buddha Nama Sutra would have told us that sun-face Buddha is held to live for 1,800 years. Moon-face Buddha lives only for a day and a single night. Doesn't even have a mouth to eat because no need. Gone. Which would we choose? Which would we choose to be? Sun-face Buddha, moon-face Buddha. And yet they're both Buddhas. They're both everything that a Buddha is, complete, perfect, total. So what's the meaning of this sameness and what's the meaning of this difference? Well, superficially, obviously, the way that we talk about absolute and relative. In the absolute terms, they're both Buddhas. There's no atom between them. In a relative sense, well, why wouldn't we choose sun-face Buddha? Why wouldn't we always choose sun-face Buddha? whether I think how cool it is to be a Buddha, or whether I think how many sentient beings could I save in 1800 years against a day and a night. So which would we choose? Everything in our culture, too, always tells us more is better. Choose Sun-faced Buddha. Mastery. The competition of life. More. I need more. I need Sun-faced Buddha. So choose. Which? And yet, of course, we're also reminded the Dharma Dhatu, if we're talking Buddhist speak for a bit. Okay, it's quite interesting to talk Buddhist speak sometimes, because all it's ever really trying to do is give us a different angle to look at ourselves with. And if we don't get that, then we're lost, really. Otherwise it's Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. So, the Dharma Dhatu, the great body of the Buddha, the body of the teaching, is all beings, is everything, within which we have Sun-faced Buddha, Moon-faced Buddha. How can you not be the Dharma Dhatu? How can you not be Buddha? But still, choose. What's the difference if I just die on this cushion in front of you, on screen? Or if I live to be 100, what's the absolute difference? No difference at all. And yet. So, let's put this another way. The more difficult way. I've muttered, whinged a little bit about having COVID for now. But do I choose a life of chronic and crippling pain, or do I choose perfect health? Sun-faced Buddha, Moon-faced Buddha. The gap, the hole between the no difference at all and the real pressing, destroying difference of this. But this gap, this little hole, is actually the point at which we enter the teaching, or the point at which we can enter teaching, the point at which we really begin to experience ourselves as the Dharma. And in fact, the Blue Cliff Record, which this koan is from, is in some ways a kind of teacher training manual, and it has these helpful little comments in the introduction, which are completely baffling, but this one makes a kind of sense, so let's have a quick read. One device, one state, one word, one phrase. The aim for the moment is for there to be a place to enter. But this is still gouging a wound in healthy flesh. It can become a nest or a den. When the great function manifests, it does not keep to rules. When thus will do and not thus will do too, this is too diffuse. When thus won't do and not thus won't do either, this is too isolated. Without getting involved in this dualism, which is correct? Too wide, too narrow. Yeah, too wide and there's no focus. We're left floundering in abstractions. Good ideas. Too narrow and there's no way in. So what about this hole? This hole between, apparent hole between Sun-faced Buddha and Moon-faced Buddha, or between the absolute and the relative. One of the things we often try and do, or no, often do, and there's nothing wrong with this, but we have to understand that we do it, is we try and fill this hole. And we fill it with what if. What if things had turned out differently? What if this happened next? Because that's a way of kind of closing this gap, erasing this gap. Because then there's me and there's the world, and I can imagine it being different. I can imagine it being not this. And because this gap is problematic and often extremely painful, we'll fill it in any way that we can. And what if is one of our best routes for that. There's a wonderful phrase that is totally ambiguous, which I used to hear a lot when I worked in prison. Not just in prison, but that's kind of its spiritual home. It is what it is. And there's two very different senses we can take this in, which take us down very different routes. One of which will open up this gap for a little, and the other one of which will, again, shut it down in the opposite way from what if. And it's a couple of very important distinctions we can make here. And in a way, if it's just perplexing, that's fine. In a way, if we can't really feel the difference, that's fine, because even our not understanding is beginning to gouge a little hole. And if we're prepared to return to that hole again and again, then maybe it becomes a point of entry. And actually that confusion is part of this process itself. We'll get back to that, but this distinction, it is what it is, as in, well, yeah, in that sense, there's nothing we can do about this. And we can take that in a negative sense, and we can talk about resignation. We can take that in a positive sense. We can talk about acceptance. And that's a subtle distinction, but it's a distinction as great as the universe. There's a parallel distinction between surrendering to life, to things being as they are, to the unknown, and subjection to an individual, an idea, a system, a state of affairs. And obviously that resignation and subjection would be a very understandable reaction in prison. If I'm not fighting against the situation, yeah, whatever. It is as it is. Nothing to be done. That's a closure. Acceptance and surrender, on the other hand, offer us an opening. What is it that makes this difference, which is kind of nothing and everything? Well, I think if we look at them in terms of separation and non-separation, favourite terms I know, we can begin to move closer to this. And if we think about thing as against process, then we can begin to get really close. I've said choose, sun face Buddha, moon face Buddha. The point is, this is always a false choice. I'm playing along with the koan. There is no choice. I am this. In this moment, I am this moment. I could not be otherwise. I am just this. Now I can embrace my limitation as my possibility. My possibility is my process. I am not a fixed thing. I am not a separate thing. I'm part of the infinite interplay of world that finds itself in this moment as this. Can I accept this body being the way it is in this moment? Can I accept, and this is really maybe the crucial bit, can I accept this mind being the way it is in this moment? Because if I'm asking myself to accept this body in its limitation, in its frustration, then surely I have to ask to accept this mind as well. And so my acceptance is not some kind of goody two-shoes. It's fine. I don't mind. Acceptance has to, when it's there, include my rage, my fear, my incomprehension, my struggle as me, as just this. It is as it is. I am this. And in the same movement, I can be joyfully accepting or crushingly resigned. I can embrace life as process with all it offers, good and bad. Or I can be just this. It is as it is. So it's not, it could be worse. It's not, it's okay. It's not, never mind. It's fierce. It's embracing this. And this kind of mental tension, because of course we want sun-faced Buddha. Actually, Barry says it nicely. He has a chapter in Nothing Hidden on this colour. Right at the end he says, Master Ma-Tsu says to us, let come what will come. Let go what will go. Very simple. Next to impossible. That impossibility too must be one of the attributes of Buddha. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. Same, but different. That tension itself, that impossibility itself, that's the gap. That's our point of entry as this body sat on this cushion in this moment, this mind struggling to frame the next sentence, your mind hearing whatever it is that you hear in this moment. That's the point of entry. So this, as in your cushion, or chair, or floor, or whatever, is the teaching seat. This is where you embody the teaching. You are the teaching. You are the Dharmadhatu. Just this. this tension, this impossibility, this gap. Feeling it, experiencing it, living it as this moment. I am this moment. Not as something separate, not as something separable from. That's where the what if leads me astray. A couple of friends were talking. One of them says, joking, well, this moment is having a hard time at the moment. This moment. What have I ever done to it? And of course the point is, you've separated yourself from it. That's the problem. I am this moment. Too little. We want to frame this moment way too small. I could say, I am the universe. And again, we hear that and it sounds way too big. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, same, different, impossible. Just this.